Meghan Markle's Archewell charity scam and as ever lies have finally been exposed in an astonishing.
From the State of California Department of Justice, a delinquency notice and warning of assessment.
Will a new change mean that Harry and Meghan's security will be paid for by American taxpayers? And why have even more
$23 million. That's how much unsold product is just sitting in warehouses right now, collecting dust. And that's not even the worst part. 2025 was supposed to be the big comeback year for Harry and Meghan, but instead, everything came crashing down. The charity got shut down by the state of California, staff are running for the exits, and those fancy jam jars everyone was talking about. Yeah, they sold 26 in 24 hours while sitting on over 137,000 of them. Here's what the numbers actually show about what's been going on behind the scenes. Before we get into how this all unraveled, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because what's coming is absolutely wild. If you're already intrigued, smash that like button. Now let's dive in. Let's start with Archewell Foundation, the charity Harry and Meghan set up back in 2020 right after they left the royal family. They named it after their son Archie, which seemed really sweet at the time.
Something vanished and almost no one noticed. One day, the Parents Network, a shining project under Harry and
The whole thing was supposed to be about compassion, service, changing lives. They talked about showing up and doing good in the world. That's what they promised anyway. Fast forward to 2025, and California officially declared it delinquent. Now, what does that actually mean? It means they can't operate as a charity anymore. They're not allowed to raise money. They can't spend money. Basically, they can't do any of the things charities are supposed to do. It's been completely shut down from functioning as a charitable organization. Here's where things get wild. Let's look at the numbers from their tax filings, because this is really telling. They spent $5.1 million in 1 year. That's a massive amount of money, right? But here's the kicker. Only $1.25 million actually went to charitable causes. Think about that for a second. Out of over $5 million that went out the door, barely a quarter of it ended up helping anyone. So where did the other $4 million go?
There are some changes coming to Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's Archewell Foundation. The president of the organization
Security bills, travel expenses, administrative costs. We're talking about a huge chunk of change going to everything except the actual charity work. The expenses category alone hit $2.9 million. And those expenses, they jumped 54% compared to the year before, going from $3.3 million up to that $5.1 million total. But wait, there's more. Get this, they paid out $913,000 in salaries. Now you might think, okay, that's for a big team of people running this foundation. Wrong. That's for just 2 employees by the end of the year. 2 people. Do the math on that. It's nearly $500,000 per person.
Aren't they? I love watching them show up and show out for their different causes. And then I like also that.
What exactly are 2 people doing that costs almost $1 million in salaries? And the money coming in, that's dropping like a rock. Donations crashed from $5.3 million in 2023 down to $2.1 million in 2024. That's less than half in just 1 year. People just aren't writing checks anymore. When you're only giving out $1.25 million in grants, but you're spending over $5 million total, that's not sustainable. You're running at a massive loss, and donors can see that. Insiders are already saying they don't see how this can continue. When you're hemorrhaging money like this and bringing in less than half of what you're spending, something's got to give. And clearly, it did. When you're running a foundation, you need people to actually, run it. Well, Archewell had a bit of a problem with that in 2024.
She's continued to shape its vision and future successfully. Her transition was mutually planned with intent for the...
They started the year with 5 staff members. By the end, Just 2. That's a 60% reduction. 3 people either got fired or quit right in the middle of their big rebrand to Archewell Philanthropies. When more than half your team disappears in 1 year, that's telling you something. Let's talk about who left, because these weren't just random employees. James Holt was one of the biggest names to go. This guy had been with Harry and Meghan since their royal days. He was their communications person, the one feeding stories to the press, handling their public image. Basically, he was their PR guy. And after years of doing that job, he packed up and headed back to the UK. Some people think he's laying groundwork for Harry to eventually return to Britain.
Cost you $2.1 million? I don't think so.
While others think he just wanted out. Then there's Meredith Maines. She got hired in 2024 specifically to professionalize their operation and save the brand. This was supposed to be the person who'd make them look legitimate, get things running smoothly, and turn the whole thing around. So what happened? She quit. And the timing's really interesting here. Remember the Kris Jenner party situation? Harry and Meghan showed up at her 70th birthday celebration, and afterwards, their PR team had to explain why there were photos of them there. The story they told was that the couple had filled out this special form beforehand, saying they didn't want their photographs taken at the event. There was supposedly official paperwork and everything. Here's the problem. That form never existed.
It's not a foundation, it's a charity. And its mission statement is very...
Meredith had to make public statements about this form that wasn't real, and then, not long after, she was gone. When the people you hire to manage your public image end up in difficult situations and then leave, that's significant. It's one thing when regular employees leave. People change jobs all the time. But when the people whose entire job is to make you look good can't even stick around, that's a different story. These are PR professionals, communications experts, people who are literally trained to put the best spin on things. And even they couldn't handle it anymore. So now you've got a foundation that went from 5 people down to 2, losing most of its staff right when it needed them most. The 2 who stayed, we don't know much about what they're doing, but they're apparently worth almost $500,000 each in salary. Meanwhile, the charity's been declared delinquent, donations are falling, and the people who were supposed to be running the show have all headed for the exits.
Prince Harry just dropped his royal title and went by a completely different last name. And I have so many questions.
Now let's talk about American Riviera Orchard, the lifestyle brand Meghan launched in April 2024. This was supposed to be her big business venture, jams, spreads, candles, all that luxury lifestyle stuff. And at first, it looked like it was going well. Products were selling out, headlines were everywhere talking about how successful it was. But here's where things get really interesting. Someone on Reddit discovered something wild. There was a glitch on the As Ever website that let you see exactly how much inventory they actually had in stock. All you had to do was try to add a ridiculous number of items to your cart, like 100,000 or something crazy, and the website would tell you the maximum available. And what people found was absolutely shocking. We're talking $23 million worth of unsold product just sitting in warehouses somewhere. $23 million.
In February of 2023. The last time you and I really got into Archewell and talked about it was December.
That's not a small number. That's a catastrophic amount of inventory for a brand that's only been around for less than a year. Here's the breakdown, and these numbers are nuts. She's got 137,455 fruit spread gift boxes in storage. Those are the fancy jam sets everyone was talking about when the brand first launched. Now, you'd think with all that press coverage, these would be flying off the shelves, right? Wrong. In a 24-hour period, they sold 26 of them. 26. While sitting on over 137,000. Let's do some quick math here. If she keeps selling at that rate, and we're being generous by assuming she even maintains that pace, it would take 9 years to clear through the current inventory. 9 years. And here's the thing that makes this even worse. These aren't products that last forever.
Remember how around this time last year, the British media was reporting that Archewell was a failing business?
We're talking about jam, spreads, food items. They expire, they go bad. You can't just keep them in a warehouse for a decade and expect them to still be sellable. But it doesn't stop with the jam. She's got 44,000 jars of orange marmalade sitting there. There's 62,000 of those signature candles. You know, the ones with her birthday on them that were supposed to be this special thing. Nobody wants those either. Then there's 80,000 containers of flour sprinkles, 39,000 boxes of peppermint tea, and it just keeps going. This woman has tied up millions and millions of dollars in products that aren't moving. When that Reddit user first posted about finding this information, people couldn't believe the numbers. Someone pointed out that you should never be able to add 137,000 of anything.
Promotional initiative built around helping parents who had lost their children to the dangers of social media. Then, just like that, gone.
To an online shopping cart. That's not how successful e-commerce works. When you've got that much inventory just sitting there, that suggests a miscalculation in business planning. The worst part, all those headlines about selling out when the brand first launched, she had very limited stock initially, which created buzz, sold out fast, got all that free publicity, and then ordered hundreds of thousands based on that initial response. Except those initial sales were just curiosity. People wanted to see what all the hype was about, spent $42 on a jar of jam, tried it, and never came back. Let's rewind to April 2024 when As Ever first hit the market. The headlines were everywhere. Meghan Markle's jam sells out in hours. Products flying off the shelves. It looked like a massive success story. Every major outlet was covering it, talking about how her lifestyle brand was this instant hit.
To be informing and complaining to the IRS, and I would not discourage.
And if you were just reading those articles, you'd think she'd nailed it. But here's what actually happened behind those headlines. When the site first went live, she only had a few hundred units of each product available. Not thousands, not tens of thousands, just a few hundred. Just enough to create that sold out moment that would get everyone talking. And it worked perfectly. The products sold out fast, the media ran with the story, and suddenly everyone's talking about how successful Meghan's new venture is. The problem is, those limited sales numbers weren't representative metrics to base a business on. When you only stock 200 or 300 units of something and it sells out, that doesn't tell you there's demand for 150,000 units. But that's exactly what happened. She placed massive orders based on that initial sellout. But here's what happened. Those first buyers were curiosity purchases. People saw all the press coverage, wanted to see what the big deal was, and bought one to try it.
Registry of Charities and Fundraisers in California declared that the Archewell Foundation is not in good standing. Archewell failed to properly send its annual report.
At $42 for a jar of jam, that's already pretty steep. But people figured they'd give it a shot. Then they got it, tried it, and didn't find it remarkable enough to repurchase at that price point. One person who ordered the products said it tasted like Smucker's. Another pointed out they wouldn't pay $36 for it. And that's the problem with curiosity purchases. They're one and done. People bought it once to see what the hype was about, but they weren't coming back for more. No repeat customers, no word of mouth, nothing. The Netflix show was supposed to change all that. With Love, Meghan was meant to be the thing that drove sales, showed off the lifestyle, made people want to buy into the whole brand. The first episode got decent views because people were curious. But then something happened during that episode that went viral for all the wrong reasons. There was this moment with Mindy Kaling where
to be what happened at the event, it's what happened after.
Right. As their spokesperson describes it, and as we have confirmed,
Meghan insisted on being called Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. instead of just Meghan Markle. That clip blew up online, but not in a good way. After that first episode, viewership dropped off completely. Nobody was watching. The show was supposed to be this promotional tool for the brand, but it flopped. And now she's releasing a cookbook based on recipes from that show that nobody watched. In publishing, timing is everything. You launch a cookbook while the show is hot, while people are still talking about it, while there's momentum. Not 6 months later when everyone's moved on and forgotten about it. And so now you've got this situation where she made a big bet based on very limited initial inventory, ordered hundreds of thousands of units that people didn't want to repurchase, and the promotional tool that was supposed to drive sales completely failed.
Are the problem. Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, sent out their 2024 Christmas card.
And all of it is sitting in warehouses, gathering dust, slowly expiring, while she's talking about expanding the brand. It's like watching someone double down on a losing hand. So, on top of the inventory disaster and the failed show, there's another issue brewing, and this one involves Martha Stewart. Now, Martha Stewart is basically royalty when it comes to lifestyle content and cooking. She's been doing this for decades, and she's very protective of her work. And apparently, she's not happy about something called the one-pot pasta situation. Here's what happened. People who watch cooking shows and follow recipe creators started noticing something when With Love, Meghan came out. There were similarities between some of the recipes on the show and content that already existed online. We're talking about stuff from Pinterest, recipes that look a lot like Joanna Gaines's work, and yes, things from Martha Stewart's collection.
Extends to individuals and organizations of all walks of life with varying political...
Now, recipe inspiration is common in the cooking world. Chefs and home cooks share ideas all the time. But when people started pointing out these similarities, it raised some eyebrows. Especially the one-pot pasta thing with Martha Stewart, because that's become kind of her signature dish. She's known for it, she's talked about it extensively, and now there's a very similar version showing up on Meghan's Netflix show. The timing on this is interesting because Meghan's planning to release her first cookbook this year. It's going to feature recipes from the Netflix series. The same show that people have been saying contains these similar recipes. So, naturally, folks are wondering what's going to be in that book. If those recipes that people noticed make it into the published cookbook, things could get complicated. But here's what's really wild about all this. While dealing with the recipe situation...
I did a big piece about the kind of royal year of 2025 and looking ahead to 2026.
The inventory problem and the failed Netflix show, Meghan's still talking about expanding the brand. She's got $23 million in unsold products sitting in warehouses, cookbooks coming out based on a show nobody watched, and recipe similarities that have people talking. And instead of pulling back or regrouping, the plan is apparently to expand. It's like she's convinced that if she just keeps pushing forward, somehow it'll all work out. More products, more ventures, more expansion. Never mind that the current inventory isn't moving, or that there are questions about the content, or that the show flopped. The answer apparently is to do more of it. Remember at the beginning when we talked about Archewell Foundation being declared delinquent? Well, there's more to that story, and it involves some pretty interesting financial stuff that's been going on for years. The foundation hasn't filed complete tax paperwork properly.
They were stripped of their automatic right to taxpayer-funded police protection when they're in Britain. The reason for this...
For 3 years now. 3 years. For any charity, that's a major red flag. These filings are required by law, they're public record, and they're how people can see where donations are going and how money's being spent. When a charity doesn't file properly, it raises serious questions about what's happening behind the scenes. Now, right when things started getting complicated with all this scrutiny, something interesting happened. They rebranded, Archewell Foundation became Archewell Philanthropies, and they changed their entire structure to something called a fiscal sponsorship model. On the surface, that might sound like just a name change and some reorganization, but it's actually much more significant than that. A fiscal sponsorship model works differently from a traditional foundation.
Cohesive, none of it new. If this was meant to be inspirational, it failed. It came off desperate, self-serving.
It reduces transparency. It makes it harder for people to see exactly where money is flowing and how it's being used. The financial reporting requirements change. The oversight is different, and the public can't track things as easily. Some people use fiscal sponsorships legitimately for administrative efficiency. But the timing here is what catches people's attention. Let's talk about the money itself, because these numbers are fascinating. Back in 2021, when Archewell was brand new, they received $13 million in funding. $13 million for a foundation that had just launched. That's a massive amount of money. Way more than most new charities ever see. For context, most foundations spend years building up to that kind of funding level. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 2024, something changed. The funding got cut significantly. And what happened to donations?
Harry and Meghan dropped $500,000 to help children in Gaza. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are...
They crashed. We're talking about going from $5.3 million in 2023 down to $2.1 million in 2024. That's more than a 60% drop in just 1 year. The timing is notable when you look at it all together. The foundation gets this huge influx of money in 2021, operates for a few years with healthy funding. Then in 2024, the tap gets turned off and donations immediately collapse. It's like they were dependent on that one major source of funding, and when it went away, everything fell apart. Think about what that means for the operation. You've built your entire budget around having several $1 million coming in every year. You've hired staff, committed to programs, taken on expenses. Then suddenly that money stream dries up, and you're left trying to operate on less than half of what you were getting before.
Communities alike. The couple announced they are completely restructuring their Archewell Foundation, rebranding it as Archewell Philanthropies. And
no wonder they had to let most of their staff go. And this all happened right before they got declared delinquent by California. So you've got incomplete tax filings for years, a suspicious rebrand that reduces transparency, a collapse in funding, and then the state shuts down your ability to operate as a charity. When you line it all up chronologically like that, it paints a pretty clear picture of a foundation that was never really on solid ground to begin with. Now let's talk about what's happening in the UK, because this ties into everything else we've been discussing. Harry's got a security situation that's been making headlines, and it involves British taxpayers potentially funding his protection when he visits the country. Here's the setup. Harry was in the UK for a court appearance, and during that trip, something happened. A woman approached him, and his security team had to step in.
Required or requested, please exclude all pages of Schedule B, and a lot of nonsense. An organization is listed as the...
Now, this woman is being described as a dangerous stalker who poses a credible threat to Harry's safety. That sounds serious, right? Except there's something really strange about this whole situation. This woman isn't some random person who showed up out of nowhere. She's actually a known fan of Harry and Meghan, someone who's been photographed with them multiple times over the years. We're talking about events at the Invictus Games in Germany, Canada, Nigeria. She's followed them around to different countries, and Harry has literally posed for selfies with her. There are pictures of them together at these events. So you've got someone who Harry has willingly taken photos with at multiple public events across the world, and now suddenly she's being presented as a dangerous threat. The timing on this is really interesting.
The Parents Network was just one casualty of that system. Archewell Audio fizzled. Their partnership with Spotify dissolved.
Because it happened right when Harry's been pushing for taxpayer-funded armed protection in the UK. Here's how the security thing works in Britain. Working royals get protection paid for by the government. But Harry's not a working royal anymore. He stepped back from those duties when he moved to California. So normally, he wouldn't qualify for automatic taxpayer-funded security. He'd have to pay for his own private security like any other wealthy person living abroad. But if he can demonstrate that he faces credible threats, that changes the equation. That's where this stalker situation comes in. The incident got flagged to something called RAVC, the Royal and VIP Executive Committee, as part of the assessment of threats Harry faces. And according to sources close to the Sussexes, it worked. The word is that armed police protection for Harry's UK visits is now pretty much guaranteed.
So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have let go of more Archewell employees. And by downsizing, I mean...
People in the UK are not happy about this. The country's dealing with a cost of living crisis right now. Regular people are struggling to pay their energy bills, working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. And now they're being told their tax money is going to fund 24/7 armed security for a multimillionaire who chose to leave the country and move to a mansion in California. And here's what makes people even more frustrated. Other members of the royal family don't get this level of protection. Princess Anne, who works harder than almost anyone in the royal family, only gets security when she's actually on official royal duty. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie don't get automatic protection at all. But Harry, who isn't even a working royal, is about to get round-the-clock armed guards paid for by taxpayers. The whole thing raises questions about timing and motivation. Harry and Meghan's income streams are drying up. We've covered the Archewell situation, the A's ever inventory disaster.
That's me smiling at the 6 security guard watching me.
Honestly, when good people are really out here...
Netflix deal ending, Spotify already gone, they're hemorrhaging money on their Montecito lifestyle, their private security, their legal battles, all of it. And now Harry's pushing to get British taxpayers to foot the bill for his UK security. Some people think this is about more than just security. They think it's about Harry trying to work his way back into the royal fold. If he can get automatic armed protection approved by the government, he can use that as leverage. It's a signal that he's still important, still deserving of royal treatment, even though he walked away from all the responsibilities that typically come with it. But whether that strategy will work is another question entirely.
Making headlines again, this time for their latest fundraising approach. And this time the price tag has every...
The British public's opinion of Harry has dropped significantly over the past few years. The interviews, the book, the accusations against his family, all of that damaged his reputation in the UK. And now this security situation is making things worse, not better. It's adding fuel to the fire of people who feel like Harry wants all the benefits of being royal without any of the actual work or duty that comes with it. So let's bring this all together and look at what 2025 actually was for Harry and Meghan. It wasn't the comeback year. It wasn't the turning point where everything started working out. It was the year when everything that wasn't working became impossible to ignore. The charity, shut down by the state of California, can't raise money, can't spend money, can't operate. Staff reduced from 5 people to 2, with the key players heading for the exits.
Their charity released their latest annual filings. They gave away $2.1 million. It's really...
Donations dropped by more than half in a single year. Tax paperwork incomplete for 3 years running. A rebrand that happened right when scrutiny increased, changing to a structure that makes financial transparency harder to track. The business, $23 million in unsold inventory sitting in warehouses. Those 137,000 jars of jam that sold 26 units in 24 hours paint a clear picture of how this went. Products that are expiring, losing value, taking up space, and tying up capital that's desperately needed elsewhere. A launch strategy with very limited initial stock that backfired spectacularly when they ordered massive quantities nobody wanted. The Netflix show flopped after the first episode. The cookbook based on that show coming out 6 months too late when nobody's thinking about it anymore. Recipe similarities that have Martha Stewart unhappy, and
advocacy, our voices, our financial support, volunteering. So we hope to see a positive change.
People asking questions. And through it all, talk of expansion while sitting on mountains of unsold products. The income, Netflix deal ending, Spotify already gone, donations collapsing, no new revenue streams replacing what's being lost. Meanwhile, expenses keep piling up. Security, travel, lifestyle costs, legal matters. The math doesn't work. It hasn't worked for a while, but now it's increasingly clear. And then there's the UK security situation. A stalker who's actually a longtime fan who's been photographed with Harry at events around the world, suddenly being presented as a dangerous threat at exactly the right moment to justify taxpayer-funded protection. British people struggling with their own bills, being told their money's going to fund armed guards for someone who chose to leave and lives in a California mansion.
$2 million security bill and Netflix project stuck in limbo, and critics are saying it's all smoke and mirrors.
Everything's hitting at the same time. The charity can't operate, the business is drowning in inventory, the money's running out, the staff have left, the show's failed. The public in both countries has turned against them. This isn't a rough patch or a temporary setback. This is what happens when the foundation was never solid to begin with. Those 137,000 jars of jam sitting in a warehouse, that's the perfect symbol for the whole situation. A massive bet based on incorrect assumptions, ordered in quantities that made no sense, sitting unsold, while everything else falls apart around them. 2025 wasn't a turning point. It was the year when reality finally caught up. So, what do you think about all this? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you made it this far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this story's far from over. Thanks for watching.